All right, on this practice problem, or this next series here, this is just for you to practice. So there's 3 tiers of questions that you can try. Tier 1 is going to be a little bit easier, and then Tier 3 will be a little bit harder. So you can pause the video and try any of these that you want, just to give some practice, and I'll show you the answers and work through one of them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these just to show you what the answers are for Tier 1. Tier 1 questions are right there, or answers. Tier 2 answers are right here. Tier 3 answers are all right there. And so I'm going to do one of these just to show you maybe a little bit more difficult one. So I'm going to try a Tier 3 question, and we will do this one right here, this bottom one. So that one, the answer should have been 0 plus or minus 1 and then plus or minus I root 6. So if we were doing that question here, again, we go through this process. You don't necessarily have to graph these, but it's not a bad way to check answers. But the way that we have been solving these is to factor them. So if I look at this problem, I'm going to take out an x for sure. Then this would become 3. Oh, I should take out more than that. All right, I should take out a 3x. 3x, everything can be divided by 3. So now this would become x to the 4th plus 5x squared minus 6 equals 0. Then we're going to go ahead and try to factor this. Again, we have a 3-term polynomial, so I'm going to attempt to make double parentheses here and see if we can do that. And so this looks like a kind of a snowflake situation. So if we try that out, my first term is 1. My a times c term is negative 6. Middle term is 5. And so we're trying to think about what multiplies up to negative 6 and adds up to 5. So that would be 6 and 1, with 1 being negative, right? So factoring this, we have this column, which is 1x plus 6. Instead of x, it's going to be x squared. So it's going to be x squared plus 6 here. And then the other column is 1x minus 1. But that should be x squared because we were dealing with an x to the 4th there. So this is an x squared minus 1. All right, so now we think about factoring this down further. 3x is obviously factored already. X squared minus 6, or sorry, x squared plus 6 is also already factored. You can't go any further than that on it. This one right here you can factor. That is going to be the difference of squares, so that could break down further to x plus or minus 1. I'm going to bring everything else down, so this is 3x times x squared plus 6 equals 0. And now everything is factored now. So the only thing that's, I guess, different in this Tier 3 problem is that we're going to have a couple irrational answers, which is no big deal. We use the zero product property again, and we say, all right, 3x equals 0, so therefore one of my answers is 0. Then I set x squared plus 6, set that equal to 0, and I solve. Well, this is now a quadratic equation, and we just spent the whole chapter on quadratic equations. So how do we solve this? This looks like one where you can solve by taking a square root. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides and get negative 6. Then take a square root to get plus or minus the square root of 6. Sorry, the square root of negative 6. And since we know that this is an imaginary solution, right? We know that the square root of negative 1 we can kind of separate and change that into an I. So this is really plus or minus I root 6 is my two more answers. And then these other two are simply x equals -1 and x equals +1. So those are my answers. I have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5 answers here. But if you think about the graph is not going to have 5 zeros on the real number line or the real grid. It's only going to have 3 because this right here is a real number. So is this, so is this. But that's an imaginary solution. So while that is an answer to this problem, it's not going to show up on the graph as being like an x-intercept because my x-axis is the real number line. It's not an imaginary number line. So if you were to graph this, let me just bring up like Desmos. So here's the graph, plugged it in, and you can see that it's just going to show you these 3 zeros that I have here, 3 solutions as plus or minus 1 and 0, which are here. This is not going to show up on the graph, but it definitely is still a solution. It's just we have 3 real numbered solutions, and then we have 2 imaginary solutions in my answer.